Good afternoon, everyone. All right, that sounds like there's 7 people there. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, great. I know that it's late. It's been a long day, very inspirational, but my culture is a little bit call and response. So forgive me if I ask for some calling and some responsing. All right, so first of all, I'm going to give you 10 seconds while I talk to think about your favorite lyric or your favorite 2 lines of a poem. I want you to think about that right now. But before we do that, I just want everyone right now to turn to the person next to them, either side, just say, "What's up?" Or some version of. Now I need everybody to just shout their name out. Just fill it with your name. Fill this theater with your name. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm Kwame. All right, good. So now that's given you at least 30 seconds to think about what your favorite lyric or your favorite poem is. And you can shout it out or you can sign it. I don't mind what you do. Just are we there? Just put your hand up in the air when you're there. Are we there? Are we there? We're going to shout it out together. Thank you. And the reason why I got you to say "what's up" to the person next to you, because they'll make sure that you shout it. All right, we're there. I can see the hands up. All right, I'm going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fight the power. I can hear poems, man. There'll be a test to find out if you still think it's the same favorite line at the end. But let me just start by saying thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. And most importantly, thank you, friends and family, for welcoming me back home. It's a really beautiful thing. Josie Rourke once said that we make theatre in Britain like the Brazilians play football. I'm old enough to remember being a child in the 70s, watching Brazil play on the telly. And I can look back now, of course, and I realize that they did more than play the beautiful game. They, along with Muhammad Ali in boxing, they were more than the sum of their parts. They made me feel connected to a larger, more loftier goal. That of community, that of pride in that community amid the onslaught of subtle or not so subtle notions of white supremacy. They inspired me to be momentarily bigger than myself. In short, they not only inspired me, but they inspired a whole generation. And what was interesting, thank you, and what was interesting, for me, I'm sure that gag's been done already today, but what was interesting to me in reading about that era and reading about those people is that they seemed to know that. There was a moment when they just accepted, I am bigger than me. Now, we in theatre and the arts in general, I think we're slightly shy about being inspirational, about claiming that that's our gig. And I understand it. Of course, it's almost impossible to measure. I mean, how do you put growth figures against that? How do you quantify it? And yet I wager, as I've just proved, that everyone in this room has had a moment, an interaction with a piece of art that either changed your life or kept you alive. Our job, I think, is to remember that our job is to lead people to inspiration. I became an AD simply, actually, to stop myself complaining about everybody else's leadership. To prove to my mother that a life in art could contribute to the greater good, like every immigrant family. She wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor, and etc., and I chose art. Anyway, I landed in Baltimore, center stage, in 2011, and I had a really big PE political agenda. I would catalyze debate with my art that led to change. So I opened my first season with Arthur Miller's adaptation of Ibsen's Enemy of the People. I was really proud of myself. It was a run-up to the election. The themes were really relevant to what was happening with water in Baltimore at the time. And it was a disaster. It was savaged by the local press. Complaints from older subscribers about the colorblind casting I did led to subscribers leaving us, sometimes in droves. It was really rough. And although I was really proud of the work that we did on that production, it was marked in the annals of center stage history as a failure. And it was my opening one. Well, it was a failure until, actually, on my last day of as AD, my former board president sent me an article from the Baltimore Sun, our big newspaper, dated the 15th of December, 2017. And if I may, I'll read it to you. The predominantly African-American neighborhoods along the western bank of the river, just south of downtown Baltimore, are crisscrossed by major highways and scarred by industries that have left their toxic stamp on the environment. Destiny Watford, now 22, had heard that Energy Answers planned to build its Fairfield trash incinerator, one that releases thousands of pounds of greenhouse gases and toxic substances into the very air that her school was very close to, Benjamin Franklin High School in Curtis Bay, less than a mile away. But it wasn't until a class field trip to center stage in 2012, she says, that she fully understood the consequences it could have on her community. The students saw An Enemy of the People, a play written by Henrik Ibsen and adapted by Arthur Miller. A man realizes that the new spa that his town is clamoring for is actually contaminated. And when he attempts to expose the pollution, it is he who ends up being ostracized by the community. The parallels were easy for Watford and her classmates to draw. And with the help of the community activist group United Workers, they launched a campaign to stop the incinerator. In late 2015, the students staged a sit-in at the Maryland Department of Environment, demanding it rescind a key permit for the incinerator project. 7 students were arrested. 3 months later, the Department of Environment agreed that Energy Answers had violated its permit after construction on the project had stalled for more than 18 months. Energy Answers never built the project. It says in the article, to Watford, it was a victory. But to me, the real victory was for art, was for the power it has to enter our hearts, our minds, and inspire people possibly to change things. I also took 2 other things from this. Number 1, my board chair at the time. He supported me in such a way that I knew that I didn't have to retreat from leading my theater in such a way that would catalyze real debate. Had he and the board not acted in such a supportive manner, the very many community interventions through art that we made during my tenure, well, we simply would not have made. And I mean community and interventions in its broadest sense. I learned that being political didn't always mean staging a big P political play. It was bringing the cast of our Bob Marley musical to the riot-scarred community after the Freddie Gray murder. It was making rapid response guerrilla theater to the streets where young black men and women were being shot in the run-up to Donald Trump being made president, and putting it onto the internet so that all could access. It was bringing remote-controlled robots into our spaces so that children in hospitals could control the way they viewed our shows. Not a single camera stuck at the back, but a fully maneuverable bot that had its own allocated seat in the auditorium. I learned also, in terms of diversity inclusion, that the ultimate way for us to succeed in that arena was to simply do it. We are what we see. When I arrived at Baltimore, I was the only senior manager of color. A city 65% African American, a staff at minimum of 70. There was nobody at production level, and there was 2 other people in box office. By the time I left, I was really proud that although we did know, let's go out and diversify, We did very little other than say, we create excellence here, that we innovate here, and those things can look like this too. By the time I left, we had 40% of our senior managers were people of color and 30% of our production. We put out a challenge to American theater to say, who else can do this? And we were really pleased that lots of other theaters said, we will now try and match those quotas. It was having a board and a chair that understood that innovation didn't only exist within the work that we produced in the four walls of the church, but by proving over and over again to the community that we were legitimately part of the community. And sometimes that doesn't show up with bums on seats, but it did mean that when we went into the community to raise $32 million for our capital campaign, we could look in the eyes of the donors and say, if you give to us, you give to the community that you live and breathe in. And they did. They said to us, the experts, that we could only raise 15, and we hit 32. And we rebuilt the theater in the image of the community. So now I'm here and all that's behind me. And I've taken over a theater from a living legend, no pressure. A theater that has done so much in so many of the areas of my interest that innovation seems harder. Being aware of the optics of my appointment, I know that carries great hope in the sector, but it also carries the risk that if I fail, I could set the cause back a good few years. And I kind of think that that's just the nature of the beast, is it not? That our job is to not worry about the burden of leadership or the burden of representation. I find myself far more concerned about the burden of paranoia. So it took me a little while, actually. It took me a little while living within the fears to find my own goals, to find the pathway to creating the next chapter of the Young Vic's history, and I'm right at the very beginning. But I've set up a few goals for myself. I will judge myself by how many positive debates our work has catalyzed, not only on the stage and the work that we produce around that, but just in the things that we say. I will judge myself by how diverse my administration is and my production staff are in 3 years. I will judge myself by what sincere and honest interventions I have led in the name of art. And finally, I will judge myself by knowing that when I hand on to the next AD, which I hope will be a long way away, that I can look her in the eye and say, I tried. Here's the baton. Go fight anyone who stands in the way of art and artists changing lives. How will you judge yourself? How will your community judge you? I say, let's fight the power, even though that power may be us. Thank you very much.